There are obviously a lot of choices when it comes to power meters. There are, crank-based models. There are models that estimate the power output. There are models that really kind of attach to all points on the bicycle. For me, the reason why I'm such a big fan of PowerTap and why it's my first choice for measuring power is because of the location. It's because of the hub. And while some people see that maybe as not as sexy, I see it as genius. And it's genius because it's still today the most accurate place to be able to measure power output. It's the most accurate place because it's the only place where you really only need to measure two things to quantify that power. You need the torque and you need how fast that hub is moving, the angular velocity. Because the torque tube in a power tap or in that rear hub is isolated from everything else, and because torque is really a twisting force around an element, the natural shape and location of that hub makes it the perfect location to measure torque in isolation. What that means is that you don't get errant messages from a cross chain. You don't get weird signals when that bike is, when you're standing up on that bike and things are flexing one way or the other. You don't have to end up subtracting all of these other forces that you might be measuring in other places on the bicycle. For that reason, for that simplicity, I think it's really the most accurate. But there's another reason, and maybe a more fundamental reason, and that reason is that strain gauges, which measure force in any element, are prone to drift. And they're prone to drift as temperature changes. As it gets hotter or colder, the element that strain gauge is attached to is going to expand or contract. And as it does so, that strain gauge becomes offset. And so you need a way to accurately calibrate your power meter all the time as conditions change. Because the torque tube in a power tap is actually a freestanding element, and because it can sense when there's pressure or no pressure, when there's no pressure when you're freewheeling, that system can actually auto-calibrate itself back down to zero. And having that ability, I think, is really, really amazing because throughout a ride, throughout time, this thing is always establishing an accurate baseline for itself. There's no other power meter in the world that can do that. And with that in mind, if ultimately this whole entire thing is predicated on accuracy, well then the reason I use PowerTap is because it's simply the most accurate and reliable power meter on the market today.